All right. I'm excited to be here today with my two new friends, Channing and Mackenzie. So Channing Moreland and Mackenzie Stokel are co-founders of EVA. EVA is a tech music company that helps connect artists with venues and gigs so that they can make sustainable income with their music. A little bit about Channing. She is an entrepreneur, advocate for women in music. She was recognized by Forbes. She launched Safe Spaces in collaboration with women in music to help end sexual harassment in the industry. Mackenzie has won a Forbes 30 Under 30 award. She has a degree from Belmont University, and they have combined forces to be able to help change the world for independent musicians like yourself. So really excited to have them on the podcast today to share a little bit more about EVA and how, as indie artists, you can leverage the up-to-date technology to be able to get gigs and be able to build a sustainable career. So thank you both for taking the time to be here today.
Happy to be here. Can't wait to chat.
Absolutely. So the one thing I didn't mention as well in the bio is that they both are secretly spider queens as well from Antarctica. So hopefully I'm not like blowing you guys' covers or anything.
We're going to go public with it later, but it's okay. We can be early.
This is the moment. Breaking news. There's a little inside joke there, but yeah, maybe to kick things off, for anyone who's just discovering you for the first time, could you introduce a little bit more about yourselves and kind of the genesis of EVA and really the main purpose for the company?
Yeah, so Channing and I started EVA when we were in college at Belmont University in Nashville, almost 10 years ago now. And we really just saw that there was so many up and coming artists and musicians that were not getting paid to play. A lot of times they would play for exposure or for just tips. And we didn't
even the worst, like when you pay to play, like the opposite.
100%. No, that's totally a thing. And we just did not understand that. We were like, how is that a thing? How are people not paying for this service? This is a job. This is work. This is providing entertainment and quality to an event. So we really just started helping our friends who were in bands and songwriters and artists that we really believed in get booked at different venues or bars and restaurants around town, before realizing there was a bigger need of private and corporate event planners looking for music when they go to have their event in other cities and didn't have an easy way to find talented artists.
And so EVA, how did you start building the company and the platform, and how exactly does it really work to help artists book these gigs?
Yes, Mackenzie and I, we started working together a long time ago, and we started building the very beginnings of it in college when we were both at Belmont. Just after seeing, like Mackenzie said, our friends being taken advantage of, and also us believing there had to be a better way. And we just started working with developers, building technology, making a lot of mistakes, but we started the very beginnings of the platform back in 2015, 2016. We originally launched it on college campuses because that was just the clientele that we knew of. And then from there, we started just grassroots growing from campus to campus. And then these corporate planners started coming to us. Fast forward today, and we can talk a lot about the pivots that we've gone through the pandemic and what else we book now. But the platform today, entertainers can apply to be on EVA, and then they have their own profile with offerings, and they're able to submit for ready to pay gigs. And we do lots with brand activations, conferences, summits, more higher end events that get them paid more, typically anywhere from 4 to 10x what a bar gig will pay. So that's been a big driving force for us of why we focused on them. And the platform has grown so much as well. What we do now on the platform looks very different than what we did at the very beginning.
That's amazing. And if I see this correctly, it looks like you've generated over $4 million in income for entertainers across 7 different cities. Is that number correct? Or is that old? Is it different than that?
That's old. We've done 6 million now to entertainers. So just love that. So got to just keep it going.
Fantastic. Awesome. So, for independent artists who are here right now who maybe they're just kind of started in their career and they're trying to figure out, how do I build my initial community? How do I book the right shows? How do I make sustainable income? Could you share a little bit more in terms of the process for Obviously, you've worked with a lot of artists now, and you've seen which ones have used the platform and knocked it out of the park, and which ones maybe the strategy wasn't the best. And so I'm curious what the difference is between those two different types of musicians.
Yeah, great question. I would say the very first thing any artist should do when they're wanting to get booked more and get paid gigs is have some really good video content of you performing live. This is probably the time where it does, any type of gig, even if it's in front of like nobody or a very small audience, just having that content, that helps us so much be able to sell the artist and kind of pitch what it is that they can bring to an event. So that's step one, for sure, having some good quality live video content. Photos are great as well, some good links, being active on social media, just so we have things that we can share with our clients. They most times will not get to see you in person live before booking you for their event. So that's kind of the next best thing, is that they can watch some good videos, get a feel for who you are and your social. And then after that, I think what's really important and has worked really well for artists in corporate is just really understanding the event planner. They are very different than just people that work at venues or people in the music industry. Honestly, they even speak like a completely different language, we find sometimes. Like, they want different things. They know nothing about sound production. They don't understand why things cost what they do sometimes, but they obviously want music and value that type of art at their event and know that it gets people dancing, or whatever type of event it might be, whatever type of music it might be. They know that that's going to bring value. And some other things to understand, like really being professional and showing up on time, getting there early, even not swearing, not eating or drinking at the event, like things like that. Pretty basic, but like go a really long way at corporate events. And sometimes there's even, those rules that people have to sign off on before getting to the gig.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is, to start with, it's important that you have some good material so that people know what they're getting. Because if they don't see you play, they don't know if it's a quality product. That's really important for them to have that first. And then one interesting point you brought up is that because these gigs in large part aren't just your classic like bar gig that will pay just a very small amount, but it's actually corporate events. They have event planners and they speak a different language entirely. And so you kind of have to learn how to communicate with them in the right way. And just being professional, having the fundamentals down for how you show up, it builds a lot of reputation and trust. So, I mean, maybe breaking some of those apart, the first one that you mentioned, for an artist who's watching or listening to this right now, and maybe they know, they're like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Or like, I know I should get like live footage, but they don't really know exactly what they need or where to start. Do you have any good recommendations for them in terms of like, how do they actually go about getting that right kind of assets and footage that will help them be successful?
Yes. And we totally know, like, sometimes it can feel daunting to hear, oh, I need to go get this high quality produced footage of myself. And we have helped artists just even walk through. It's crazy what an iPhone can do these days. And we have had artists it's like, find a cool backdrop setting, just a cool area, and even perform acoustically live some of your songs and covers. We had one artist, they did some really great 80s nostalgic pop and some current day Harry Styles. We were like, do a quick reel of those and then throw in some originals. That right there is so much better than a vertical iPhone shot from a loud venue. It just feels a little more put together. They can see what you can do. You're really playing to your strengths, and that took no money. So even something like that, just shot in with a little bit more intention, that will go the extra mile with our clients.
Super smart. So it sounds like what you're saying is that you don't necessarily have to get like a full $5,000 production team to record these videos, but with your iPhone, you have an amazing recording device. And when you mentioned kind of recording yourself and getting it set up with maybe a mashup or like reels, are you suggesting sort of like an Instagram Reels format where it's like a vertical video of you like at home, or just like getting a music video in some sort of location, regardless of whether it's actually a venue or not?
Yeah, what would be most ideal is horizontal, just so they can have a full frame, see more. And then even if you could get it on a tripod, just having it be, a steady hand or a friend to help. And then I know that they even have like some plug-in mics that like go into your USB-C. Like there's different ways to elevate it, but even just baseline horizontal footage on a tripod is great. And it could even be a blank wall behind you. I think it's also a chance for them to get to see you in action, get to learn a little bit more. So that would be my recommendation for low budget.
I would say too, it can be hard for the type of artist to get that quality content. Like a DJs, for example, we always struggle getting video because we don't necessarily need as much a video of them just playing other people's songs. But in those cases, the client is going to be looking for how is the audience there? Like if they perform at an event, videos of the audience, if they're dancing, if there's people moving around and really enjoying it, that goes a long way. So there is different types of music where it may not make sense to just get you performing and doing your thing. That is definitely the best case scenario. But like a sizzle reel or like chopped up pieces of songs or performances is great as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, so it seems like what you're saying is that you kind of got to start with where you're at. And ideally, you have some footage at like a real show where there's an audience and the audience is like interacting and getting into it. And that is what the event planner might be looking for in terms of like they want to create a good experience for the event and for the crowd. But, it's also good to start out if you don't have anything that you need to have something. And so recording, a nice horizontal video of you performing is, a good place to start. It seems like what you're suggesting too, probably the best thing would be to have an actual live audio recording as opposed to like creating a video that you're kind of syncing up to a pre-recorded version so people can actually hear you perform live.
Exactly. They really want what our clients are, why they're utilizing those videos is they want it to feel as real to them booking you live so that they can feel confident saying, hey, I haven't had the chance to get to see this person myself live, but I can hear them well enough. I see they're on tune. I see that they can, be versatile. I'll book them based off this. So we want it to be as real as possible.
Got it. Cool. So moving on to the second thing that you had brought up around event planners and learning how to speak the lingo and knowing how to communicate. Could you share a little bit more in terms of like maybe some examples of some things that would fly with normally, but an event planner would have no idea like what you're talking about, or what are some of the differences between when you're communicating with an event planner and a different kind of venue booking agent?
Yes, absolutely. So a big piece of what they're going to be looking for is that you can certainly be professional. That seems pretty obvious, showing up on time, not swearing on stage, not making inappropriate jokes, like not talking about anything that you wouldn't want your grandma to hear. Just being really clean, that's very important at corporate events. Not drinking for sure is a big one, or eating off a buffet if there is food, unless otherwise agreed upon. Sometimes they do get to eat, but that's something that would be in the contract or the writer. And then the sound production, that is always a big piece of something we end up having to kind of get involved in and figure out with both parties, because a lot of times event planners don't know what sound they're going to need to provide. They don't know what the venue already has. They don't know what is necessary. So we will always get the writer from the artist, and either the venue may have backline, they may have everything you need already. We'll confirm that. Or sometimes if it's a lot of these corporate events aren't in a traditional venue, like it might be in a field somewhere, or it might be on someone's deck, or like in just random places that wouldn't have a sound set up at all. And then in that case, the entertainer is bringing all of the sound themselves, and they usually know what to bring that's going to make them sound a certain way. For 100 people versus 500, they can kind of know the difference and know what they need to bring. So those are some of the details we always work out before time, because you got to be heard. That doesn't really make sense to book somebody if you're not going to be able to hear them.
And I'll say too that especially with acts that have not performed corporate before, this kind of code of conduct can seem pretty intense. Like, don't eat off the buffet, don't drink, and don't do this. And that can seem very different than a typical venue gig. But the best way we describe it is it's like, yeah, first off, we totally understand that corporate and private events, maybe they're not for everyone, but they're a great way to get paid a lot more money. There is a way to play the game when it comes to corporate events. And that's what we're really here to help you through that process, because it can seem intense, but you're being hired. You're not the star of the show of this event. We believe you are, but it just is what it is. And we just have to walk people through that. It's ultimately the client's event and we're a part of it.
Totally makes sense. So it sounds like what you're saying is that this is just a different style of event and a service really that you're providing. And one of the benefits is that this service pays, multiples of what you're making doing the same thing in a different scenario. But, what you're there to do ultimately is to provide a service to the event planner and the event itself. Okay. So I had another follow-up question there, but I lost my train of thought. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And one thing that I really like to explore on the show is it is modern musician and kind of talking about the future of where things are headed. And I'm not sure if this is something that you guys have a lot of experience with or what this might look like, especially in terms of the corporate event. It might be a little bit of a different scenario. But in terms of like live streaming and potentially AR types of shows and the future of live experiences, do you think that there's a place for that? Like, do corporate events happen virtually, and are they potentially looking for musicians to feature, to be able to soundtrack those virtual events?
Yeah, I would say so. We did exclusively virtual events during COVID, as you can imagine. So that's where we started learning about how a good virtual event can happen and what we can add to it so it doesn't just feel like you're watching a YouTube video of a performance. You can be more engaging, interactive. Things like that can make a virtual stream performance feel like you're there and feel a lot different than just a pre-recorded video. One artist that we work with a lot for virtual events does this thing where they will they're saying, okay, I'm going to do covers now. If anybody wants to hear a song, throw it in the chat. And then he will mash up all of the songs that people put in and into one long song. And it's a really fun way an easy, simple way to get people engaged, get people working with you, and then they're seeing a result of something that you kind of threw out as an idea. So little things like that are really great ways to succeed when performing at a virtual event. I would say every company is a little different. Some companies, they have no interest in doing virtual events, or they're going to do them a lot because they have a huge team with offices all over the world. So it kind of varies like who works well and does them a lot. But I would say it is here to stay, and it does make a lot of sense to get a virtual set down if that's something an artist is interested in.
Yes. And I would add to that from your point, Michael, on the potential AR, VR side. We also have gotten to see, it's definitely more the tech companies are exploring what does it look like to have more of a VR experience for the attendees. And it has been really fun to just start playing with that. So it's been amazing to watch what Fortnite and Roblox are doing on that side. I do see that coming into the corporate world, trying to find ways to make that virtual attendee feel more engaged and a part of the event. So I definitely think there's still more to come. I think we haven't even scratched the surface on that side. I think our society continues to go a little bit slower with that than I think we were all expecting, but I think there's still a lot more to be done there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. I know there's just a recent breakthrough at the time of recording this that Meta announced their Orion glasses. And apparently that was a big deal because it was the first time it wasn't just a big headset, but like you had glasses that actually did a pretty good job with AR. So I don't know. It would be kind of crazy if we could have a more immersive show experience, but it's like, from the comfort of our own house. Although it's going to be hard to replace the experience being together in person and being able to like see and hug and really be in the space together.
Yeah, I think there is a future for that. I think we just need to think of it as a different experience than going to a concert, because that is its own thing. That will always be. People always are going to want to go to concerts and see their favorite artist live. But I feel like there could be a streamed version that I would be super interested in how that looks. I'm 5'2", so I'm always like behind the tall person at the show. Like if I could somehow avoid that and like see the performance, I would pay top dollar for that. Like I Or if you're
I'm sorry, Mackenzie, I'm always the tall guy. I always feel bad for who's behind me. I'm 6'5", so like, it's like where I am, I always know there's going to be someone behind me.
Well, and I feel bad too, because it's not your fault. And like, if you like the artist and you get there early and want to be up front, like you should be able to have that too. I don't need to like take that away from the tall people, but I do get frustrated when the tall people come up later and I'm like, I've been here for an hour, dude. Like, you got to let me go in front of you. This is not going to work.
I definitely wouldn't do that. I would let you stand in front, Mackenzie, if we're ever at a show. But luckily, we've got virtual shows coming up, so we'll all be the tallest person in the room. Very soon, at the time of recording this, in like a few days, we're releasing a podcast episode that we recorded with Nolan Arbaugh, who's the first human to have a Neuralink installed. And so it's a neural interface that lets him, despite he's quadriplegic, and so he's lost function below the neck, but he's able to use his Neuralink to be able to control electronics and devices. And so on the podcast, we recorded the first song ever telepathically using AI music generation and his thoughts. It was wild. But I wonder if there will come a day where we actually have the ability to like create Matrix style, hopefully less evil, than like the Matrix, but a digital environment where you can like be, together in like a space like that and actually feel and have the full experience of being together.
I think so. I think it's coming.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think so too. Yeah, reading the book, The Singularity is Near right now by Ray Kurzweil, and he's like, if anyone who's listening to this right now is interested in this topic specifically, like he really goes deep. He's one of like the geniuses in the tech world. But anyways, coming back, I remembered what the question was that I was going to ask you guys earlier, which is, I'm sure there's a time and a place for every artist, regardless of what genre they make. Even like death metal artists, like for the right event where someone there like wants to have like death metal, there's probably a time and a place for it. But at the same time, I'm sure that you've seen some kind of common patterns in terms of the majority of the opportunities and gigs, kind of like who the best fit. So I'm curious, for anyone that's a musician who's kind of watching this right now, who's considering like, is this a helpful either supplemental income stream or something that I'd really like to take a crack at? Who, in your opinion, in terms of like types of musicians, types of music, might just be like really in a sweet spot where they could be a good fit for a lot of these opportunities?
That's a great question. And what has been exciting to see is why we first started is we were very passionate about getting the hyper local acts the opportunity to get bookings in their cities. And so going off of that, as we've launched in more cities, we've seen there's a specific desire to really honor the local and originality of that music vibe in that city. So what we book in New Orleans is very different than what we book in Austin, which is very different than what we book in Chicago. But with that said, so really leaning into what the city is looking for is a piece of it. So we see diversity there. The other good news for an artist, if you want corporate as a supplemental income, we have seen more and more that they want original acts to play their original music, but everyone's always going to love a cover they can sing to. And we're not saying you don't have to be a cheesy cover band. If anything, our clients don't want that, but they want an original act who's willing to weave in covers. And if you can do mashups, like Mackenzie was saying, or play to the songs that you really love, but there's something that someone can sing to in the crowd, you can play corporate. And so even if you're like screamo death metal, like by night, you can be, something slightly different by day. We have a lot of acts that do that. That helps pay for the tours. With all that said, though, there are, of course, genres that just tend to get booked more for that listening experience in corporate. We definitely see pop, funk, soul, R&B, country, really that easy listening, so to speak, music. But it's cool to see that every city wants something a little different. What would you say, Kens?
Yeah, I agree. Those are probably the most popular genres. And for sure with the covers, a lot of our clients are like, we want the Austin vibe, the New Orleans feel. They sometimes have an idea of what that means to them, and it may not actually be that authentic, but they do want to book local people that live and breathe that city. A lot of times their event is themed around the city specifically. So bringing that local vibe is great. And being able to do a few covers always goes a long way. And also knowing what you do well. I think just being confident and knowing like what you can deliver, even being able to describe your sound goes a long way.
Yes.
Because our clients like don't know music a lot of times. Like they might say, I want disco. And I'm like, you want like Motown covers, like you want a saxophone or something. Like we have to like walk them through and figure out what it is they really want to hear. It's hard to describe it. And so much music kind of like blends genres now too, that it's tough to just say this is a rock band. Like it could be multiple things. So being able to describe it really well is very valuable and can be a challenge, I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges that we hear from our artist community as well, is just around articulating kind of the concern is they don't want to put themselves in a box of like, I'm not just this or I'm not just this, but I can be eclectic and have different genres. So do you have any tips or recommendations as it relates to being able to speak the lingo of the event planner, of the common vernacular as it relates to describing their music? And any tips for artists to be able to kind of look inward or listen to their music and actually be able to communicate that?
Yes. One thing that we did, and I don't know if this fully answers your question, but it was something that we found that could help kind of bridge the gap of understanding, was we added a feature on our platform where the entertainer had to compare themselves or say they sounded like X. And so that maybe it was someone a little bit more well-known, like I sound like Adele meets Bruno Mars. It's like, oh, okay. Like I can see what you're pulling in two different genres here, but I get it as a wide listener. And so that really helps our clients who aren't going to know specifically who you are, but they can start to really get an understanding of what your sound's going to be like. So I think being able to also attribute your sound to maybe a slightly bigger artist that someone's going to be able to connect with. And then also really adding like adjectives and verbiage and themes. Like we've always wanted to play to the idea of like, where would your music be perfect for? Is it sunset on a beach, like at a, I don't even know, at a beach party, or what feels best for your music? I think that really helps our clients too, because like we were talking about with the lingo, they think setting, they think venue when they're first trying to get that event to happen. So how can you plug into that for them?
And you think audience too, just to add, like they know who's attending their event. They know the demographic of who is going to be there. It's 60% men, and the majority of people are in their 40s to 60s, for example. Like they are going to know the demographics of who's going to be there. So knowing who might like your music too, and knowing who your demo and audience is can go a long way, as well as trying to plug into what they're looking for.
Got it. Yeah, that's super helpful. So it sounds like a few of the recommendations are, one, figuring out who you are inspired by or influenced by, who you think your music sounds closest to. Even if it's not a perfect match, if you are strongly influenced by an artist, then that can be really helpful to help people kind of understand the same vein. And then having adjectives or kind of setting the scene. So actually thinking about like what setting or environment would this music play well in? And those are some helpful tips for identifying, kind of communicating to the event planner, especially what might be a good fit. Awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is great. This is like a crash course in corporate gigs for artists. So any other advice in terms of, the artists that you see like really just knocking it out of the park and taking these opportunities and running with it? Is there anything else that you notice that they're doing that's just that like extra 1% or like the 10 out of 10, like kind of cherry on top that might spark some ideas for artists on how they can really level up?
Yeah, like Michael, how you said, it really is for corporate, you're delivering a service. I think the artists that get booked all the time through EVA, it's not just delivering a great music experience, it's delivering a great experience off the stage. I think that our acts who, these event planners, they have a million and one things to do. They are so stressed out. And if something's always going to come up right before, maybe your stage plot isn't perfectly done right by AV, or maybe there's something like the meal didn't come on time. Just having that like go with the flow, like we got it, it's all good, it's okay. They're going to go book you 10 more times. Like having that sense of trust and like you've got their back is so much more important than even how you really sound. So I've just noticed that like our acts willing to go the extra mile for them, it pays tenfold.
Yeah, and I would say not necessarily even like how you can do well once you've gotten the gig. That's what a lot of what we've been talking about. But even finding these planners and like getting booked is the hardest part. Like they are not in the same circles that artists are. And a lot of times they are traveling to a city, so they don't even live in the place that you might live. So, some advice for how to find corporate event opportunities, certainly join EVA. We'd love to book you. That's a great way to do it. But also working with your city's convention bureau. Like I live in Austin, so there's a Visit Austin, there's a Visit Nashville, Choose Chicago. Like every city has a convention bureau where they're trying to attract visitors. They're trying to attract people to have their conferences, their sales retreats, their festivals, and have events that are going to bring tourism. So they're very plugged in with who is traveling there for events. They have a lot of mixers and parties, things like that, that you can just, a lot of times there's free events you can go to and start meeting people. Those are a great place to start to kind of get plugged into that world and try to meet people in the private and corporate event scene. And then there's groups and organizations in every city as well that are for corporate and private event planners or vendors or suppliers. So ILEA, MPI, those are groups that have chapters in every city that are for private and corporate event planners to gather and meet suppliers and meet artists and meet people that they would want to book. So those are some ways you can kind of get involved in your city to start meeting the right folks as well if you're interested in getting booked.
Got it. Super smart. Yeah, if you can get a gig playing the event for all of the event planners, that's a nice entry point.
Yeah, it might be worth like sponsoring an event, like you, the artist, sponsoring an event or doing it for, pretty cheap or free for something to get in front of those people. That's probably the only time I would advise like lowering your rate really for exposure. Like we hate that. And we know artists get asked that all the time. That's probably the only time I actually have seen it work really well.
That's playing chess. That's getting in front of the right people for sure.
Making one really close relationship with an event planner near you and then working with them to create an event for all of the event planners that you perform at.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
idea. I can't even tell you the amount of times that we've put an artist on a stage. And I will say, any showcase we do, we always pay our acts, but obviously some can't. That's just a big core value to us. But we've put them on stages, and then next thing we know, they're playing in Hawaii, Mexico, Vail, Aspen for these single event planners. It's like they'll take you everywhere once you're in their circles. So it's really cool to watch an artist get to grow in that way. And then the attendees at those events want to book them. And it's a ripple effect. It's just like building a fan base.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So that kind of comes back to what you both were talking about earlier, just in terms of like when you show up, like be kind, be a good person and be respectful and show up on time and don't swear or steal food without talking about it first. Just like genuinely show up and try to provide a service. And that's a way to build those long-term relationships.
Exactly. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, you also you briefly touched on the fact that there's this amazing platform that exists to help connect artists directly with these opportunities. So, thank you both for taking the time to be here today and share some really valuable lessons and tips for artists to be able to to tap into this supplemental market. Or for a lot of people, it could literally be like their full thing too. But for anyone that's listening to this right now who is interested in learning more about EVA and signing up, being successful with the platform, where can they go to get started?
Yes. So you can go to bookwitheva.com and you can sign up for free as a entertainer. And then once you're signed up, you can submit an application to officially be on the platform to receive bookings. Really, the application is just so we ensure we have all the right information, that you have experience with corporate, or if you don't, we can help you walk through that. And just to make sure we have essentially everything you would put in an EPK.
All right. Fantastic. Well, like always, we'll put the links in the show notes for easy access. And Channing and Mackenzie, thank you again so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. It was great.
Loved it.
Yeah.